welcome to Global Payfest 25. I'm Natalie Lloyd, I'm Customer Success Manager at JGA Recruitment, and I'm super excited to be the host for our Brazil session. This is one of the most dynamic and complex payroll landscapes in Latin America. So Brazil's payroll system is deeply regulatory, it's data intensive, and it's increasingly digital. It has numerous statutory benefits, union regulations, and ever-evolving labour laws. So whether you're hiring one employee or managing hundreds of employees, navigating payroll in Brazil requires absolute accuracy and really strong local expertise. So today I'm joined by Ana Paula from Neeyamo. Neeyamo is a leading technology-enabled global payroll and EOR solutions provider, and they work with multinational and micro-multinational corporations. Anna's going to walk us through Brazil's payroll framework and offer key insights into staying compliant and efficient in this jurisdiction. Can never say that. So Anna, thank you so much for joining us. Do you mind starting by just telling us a little bit about your background and how you support payroll operations in Brazil?
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much for that opportunity. It's an honor to talk with you about the payroll, especially the payroll in Brazil. My name is Ana Paula, and I've been in Neeyamo for about 4 years. And I began my journey there actually as a sales representative, but over time I transitioned into the implementation team. That shift gave me the opportunity to really learn about payroll operations. I use it to sell the product, but only when I started the payroll implementation in countries like Brazil, for example, is that I really got to know more about payroll. I'm responsible for setting the Neeyamo system to match the payroll requirements, reviewing the documents, and helping the team to understand the specific needs of that complicated payroll. I also monitor the process to identify and address any gaps or challenges that might come up.
Perfect. So you really have to know the ins and outs of all of the legislation to make sure you're kind of getting that product as efficient as it can be for Brazilian payroll operations. Amazing. So in today's session, I'm sure many of you who have seen a few of the sessions or have been with the whole 24 hours, you'll probably know we're going to start off with Anna's expert presentation on Brazilian payroll. We'll then move on to case study, and we'll finish up with a Q&A session. So we'll start with Anna's expert presentation. This is going to take you through Brazil's payroll structure, any new legal updates, a little bit of a case study, and then Anna will also mention some best practices as well for multinational organizations. So Anna, tell us about Brazilian payroll.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much. Brazilian payroll is actually known for having one of the most regulated payroll systems in the world. I will be walking through some of the core elements of Brazilian payrolls, like, for example, the key features of them. The CLT, which is the main body of law government, employee and employer relation in Brazil, is like the Bible of payroll. If you want to know any or have any doubts about payroll rules in Brazil, the first place you need to look is the CLT. Like if there isn't in the CLT, you know that you need to interpret that. But if there is CLT, you need to follow exactly like it is. Another important part of Brazilian payroll is the e-social. The e-social is a platform that the government created to unify how they report employment, payroll, tax data in real time. This is where all the key compliance activities must be reported. It's critical to keep the e-social update any missing or incorrect information can lead to a very serious payroll issue or even fines. So aside from the CLT, the e-social, it is like your notebook where you need to note down everything that happens in your payroll. Aside from it, we have the third salary, which we also have the name for that, for gratificação de Natal in Portuguese. And this is a mandatory annual bonus paid in 2 installments. The first installment must be paid by November 30, and the second one must be paid by December 20. However, companies can choose to pay this early as an advance, which is another issue that we can, in another opportunity, go deep. But basically, they needed to pay those 2 installments and by this time. Another thing that we should be aware is the FGTS. If FGTS is a severance fund created by the government where the employers will contribute 8% of the employee's salary every month. Employees can access this fund in case, like, for example, termination or any specific life event, like, for example, Brazil's allow for what is called anniversary withdrawal, where the employee can take out a portion of the fund manually, but based on the birth month. Or let's say, for example, they want to finance a new home. They can use the funds of the FGTS for that. Another top compliance considerations that we should be aware is how there is social reporting. All payroll events like hires, termination, bonus, deduction, they are must be submitted in real time via a social. I said in the beginning, and I said now, if it's not in a social, it's not in your payroll. This system, they requires a strong integration and frequent updates. It must if they needed to be always update to whatever you are doing in the payroll. Any missing entry can result in huge fines. So regular validation of submit data is very crucial. Remember that we not only have the finals, but each day the finals can increase. So it's better to have everything very updated. Social contribution. Well, basically, employers, they typically contribute 20 at 28% of payroll costs to ENSS, FGTS, and other mandatory funds. ENSS is like a pension, another pension fund where the employers will be contribute, and also the employee decides to retire, they will get this amount in the ENSS. The exact rates can vary depending on the sectors and the business classification, of course. And this contribution provides protection for employees. So it's not only about retire. If there is, for example, an illness, maternity, a very bad injury, the ENSS will make a difference for this employee. Another thing that we also have and people may forget is the union and collective bargain agreements. In many cases, in many sectors, we also have this to understand in which classification and this employee is. Many employment terms such as benefit, bonus, and work hours are actually defined by the union agreements. which can override CLT standards and fail to comply with the correct union agreement can lead to legal disputes and financial penalties. And in some case, which is also discussing about this right now in the government, is if all the employees are mandatory to go with the unions. Like they are discussion about this, but this is also another topic that we could cover in another opportunity. Pay slips, which is like a nullity requirements. The pay slip they must show a clear black breakdown of basic salary, the deduction, the INSS, FGTS, and the net pays. And employees they are in Brazil, they often review their payslip in details, and any errors are taken serious. Brazilians they know how this is those stuff, so they will all the employees they will always look each of the details and to even make the math to know if they are being paid correctly. This is a habit that most employees have here in Brazil. And termination rules and severance pay. The termination payments must include any unusual vacation, a proportion of the third salary, notice period, and a 40% penalty on FGTS deposit. All payments must be complete, and the event report on a social with 10 calendar days of dismissal. One thing that I can add about that is that this 40% penalty can be negotiated in case of the employee wants to resign. And if he's not fired, he can the employer can doesn't need to pay it. But in many cases they will pay for a formal agreement, just to make sure that things are fine. Recent upcomes updates. Sorry. Simplify digital bookkeeping on social. We are having ongoing updates in report, but companies must adopt changes quickly. Remote work legislation, we had an improvements and new laws to classify responsibilities around the remote and hybrid work, especially regarding the requirements and equipment and cost reimbursements. Payroll tax relief, certain induced benefits from reduced employer INSS rates in 2024. Mandatory digital signature. Many employment-related documents must now be signed and stored digitally. Expanded payroll deduction as of March 21. New regulations expand access to payroll deductible loans for private sector's employees. This is actually to a thing that the government is doing to increasing the people how can I say, to make people buy more things, to get more money to buy things and increase the economy. And best practice for global employers. Well, first of all, they should invest in a social red payroll tax. Manual process, they can be done, but they are not sustainable. Verify union applicability on hire. Misclassification or missing agreements can trigger penalties. Use a local part or expert. Not only legal updates, data requirements are demanded, but also the language. Brazilians prefer to talk with someone who speaks Portuguese. Keep an audit trail for termination, bonus payments, tax field, inspectors may request full documentation, and train managers on leave and timekeeping. Because errors in this part can lead to disputes and payroll errors. Let's say I've seen a situation where the timekeeping was not tracked well, and the employer needed to pay 10,000 more than what it should, because the company didn't track the employee well. So
Anna, thank you. If there's anything I've learned over the last sort of 22 or so hours, it's that there's massive, massive fines to be incurred if you're not doing your payroll right, not only in Brazil, but literally anywhere in the world. So it's super important to know that legislation, to make sure that you're doing things properly. And if you don't know the rules, reach out to an expert. It's so important. Anna, one question I did have is, you mentioned there the complications that could come up if you pay a 13th month salary early. Would you mind just giving us a little example of like what sort of problems that could cause?
What you said in the beginning?
You mentioned some complications that could come up if you pay the 13th month salary early.
Oh, yes. Basically, if you don't match the deadlines for example, let's say the way you do the fines, you have difficult in calculation. You receiving fines if you don't pay in the time, and each of the time, let's say for example, let's say that you miss by 3 days, so you needed to count those 3 days, and also count the what is the how can I like, it's not the fine, but the I forgot this name in English. Like, let's say at each day you have like a number that in the inflation.
Yeah. So it'll just get bigger over those 3 days.
Yes, exactly.
For sure. Perfect. Thank you. So, you know, I think again that topic of fines is coming up. It's one of those things that, you know, if you're not getting your payroll right, your people aren't being paid right, and like you are going to get penalties for that. I think I love the bit where you mentioned that employees in Brazil really know what their payslip means. They love to break it down. They know if there's any errors. I think like I've had so many conversations here in the UK where people actually don't have a clue what their payslip means. And we've done talks about it before, we've done webinars about it before, of like, really in the UK, like not that many people know, unless they're in payroll or HR or they're sort of super clued up about where their deductions are going. They don't really know the breakdowns of their payslip. So I love that that's a real thing in Brazil. So thank you for running through all of that, Anna. We're going to move on to the next bit of our Brazil section today. So this is going to be a bit of a practical case study. Basically, I'm going to run everybody through the case study, and then Anna's going to break it down for us. So I'll just pop it up on the screen. Here we go. Okay, cool. So what we're seeing at the moment is a company in Brazil called Diginova. Now, they've recently opened an R&D office in Sao Paulo. And basically, Anna, I wanted to ask if you would walk us through some of those unique payroll challenges that they're encountering, especially sort of focusing on the labour and tax landscape, maybe any compliance hurdles, 13th salary, labour laws, things like that.
Okay. Let's see. First, what is the issue? The challenge. The first challenge we have here is the third salary mismanagement, which I think they fail to split the third salary into, or I don't know, they fail to even pay this, which of course results in compliance violation and potential penalties. Well, first of all, they immediately they needed to pay this 30 salary as soon as possible. Each day of delay, as I comment, can increase the company liability. So they needed to pay at the moment. They cannot wait to change the things in the social. First, you pay the employee, and then you think about the rest. Employee communication. Okay, this proactive check if any employee raise concern, explain the situation, apologize to them, make sure they understand that you haven't done that because you have some inner issue. Make sure they understand you are being transparent with them, because they can even sue you for that mistake. And legal risk management. If an employee files a complaint considering negotiate a settlement or a bonus to avoid this labor court litigate, as I mentioned, if the employees think you are not doing that correctly, they will sue you and they will win, because Brazil, the court always sticks to the employee in that case, no matter what. So you need to more than of course make sure that the pay is, but more than the risk on the finance, you needed to treat the employee well in those cases. So you need to make sure that first the employee is satisfied with your resolution, and then you can think about anything else. And CLT compliance. According to the article of 477, late payment can result in fines equivalent to 1 month salary per employee, typically enforced via labor claims and not automatically. Second stuff, which is basically about the FGTS, contribute errors on overtime and night shift pay. Okay. First of all, we needed to audit the past payrolls. We need to understand all the cases that for some reason was not reported in FGTS contribution. And then we need to recalculate this FGTS contribution, including our eligible amount over time, and calculate any corrections, including interest, that's the word interest, and monetary adjustments. Then you pay through Caixa. Caixa is a Brazilian bank, a government Brazilian bank, but it's also a private one, but mainly used for the public sector. And you deposit the missing FGTS amount direct into employees' FGTS account using the Caixa Econômica Federal system. And this employee will probably see those amounts, okay? So you also can check to see if you are pulling this money or not. Update is social, amend related to is social event, particularly remuneration and payments, to reflecting the correct values, and communicate internally with employees. If the employees are right, send a transparent communication and shows them that you are make sure that things are correct, because see, every little thing you do wrong is a reason for the employee to go in a dispute with you, and then you need to hire a lawyer, and it will be more exhausting for the company. And after that, you needed to do some prevention, like ensure your payroll system flags all of the correct. Provide quick training or a checklist for payroll HR staff to make sure that does not happen again. One important thing is you to have like a manual of every little thing that you need to be, that the HR need to be done and correct, and just go and cross check each of every detail to make sure that you are following all the guidelines of the payroll. Now we have the termination pay delays. Fine. Okay, in that case, the termination, they need to be paid until 10 calendar days of dismissal. And violate this it will be also another problem. So first of all, you will need to pay the amount as soon as possible, like in the third salary. You needed to pay the fine equivalent to one full monthly salary per affected employee. And also you needed to do a formal apologize. Not that you needed to do sorry, but it's better to, if you do a formal apologize to this employee, if need, negotiate a goodwill bonus or a settlement to avoid any escalation. Ask them if you don't. I've seen, especially for small companies, where they don't have a lot of resource to deal with it. But I've seen a lot of companies having serious problems with employees in that part, because they didn't manage well the employee relations, and they thought it was fine just missing the deadline and then pay the employee and the fine, but then the employee used that as a reason to do a lawsuit, to make a lawsuit with the company. So it's better to have a good relationship with this employee. And if not resolved, if the employee file a complaint through a labor court, then you needed to hire a lawyer to make sure that things won't be out of control for you. And policy improvement, review and update HR process to ensure a final pay is processed with the legal time frame for future termination. Incorrect INSS and EIR deductions. Okay, this is first of all, this you need to do an audit to identify which month employees were impacted by this outdated deduction table. Every year, we have this table, so we needed to make sure that you're following the correct year. Recalculate the deduction, use the correct INSS and the tables from the applicable period to make sure you are doing the adjustment correct. So then you can use this like the CFIP, Asocian, and your payroll software to reprocess affected calculation. And there are 2 ways of rendering this difference. Over deductions, reimbursing the employee direct or offset the excess in the next paycheck, or under deduction, which the employee consent recover the shortfall from future paycheck. Alternatively, absorb the cost if it's the company's fault. In an update the e-social, submit amend using e-social for events, and correct the tax filing if applicable. Refine any correction in DARF and GFID report, and of course have the employee communication to also affect that the benefits won't be negative impact. As you can see, all my answers, they have employee communication, because this is actually the most important in this pay. Like, you can handle a fine well. You can handle it. And any of those mistakes you can handle just fine. But the employee angriness, I'm sure you won't be able to handle it just fine. And last but not least, I'm talking about preventions and improvements that you can be doing, like automatic payroll table updates, ensure INSS and the ER tables are updated and automatic applied in your payroll system. Subscribe to compliance alert, follow updates from Receita Federal, Labor Ministry of Labor, and other authorities. Like, it's very, very easy to subscribe into those websites, to follow each of the things that they update. They will do as an update. Annual compliance review, run a payroll compliance checklist every January to confirm alignment with current legal requirements. Training documents, provide period training for HR and payroll teams, especially when law or systems like e-social are updated. Use and also use local expertise. Consider partnering with a local payroll provider or legal consultant for ongoing compliance support. Even if in Brazil, if sometimes if you're a small company or something, even then they hire account for or legal consultant to help them with the payroll. So you should always consider this as an option.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. So I know some of the solutions that you would have implemented there are things like, adjusting the payroll schedules to split that 13th salary. I think you said across November and December, and then making sure that the FGTS calculation was reviewed and updated and made sure it included all of the remuneration components. Introducing a termination checklist with that 10-day payment deadline. Super important. And then updating the INSS and IRRF tables monthly based on that federal guidance as well. Amazing, thank you. So one of the key things I really wanted us to cover today is the difference between PJ and CLT, and why employees and employers should be really, really careful about that.
Okay. I really love this part, because since the government allowed the and create the PJ in the independent contractor, many people are hiding with the PJ because they think it's better for the company. However, it can be very, very dangerous. And if they don't know what is those different, first of all, we have the contractor. In the CLT, we have them under the formal contract agreed in the laws and so on. And in the PJ, we have what's called a service contract via company in CNPJ, which means that the employee will create what we call MEI, and with be like the employee is a minor company that your company will hire. That's the first thing in the contract type. The second one is the salary payment. In the first, we have a fixed month salary plus the benefits. And in the PJ, since they are a minor company that was hired by your company, they are going to issue invoice, and the payment they are the one that agreed in that contract. The tax and deduction will be also different. In the CLT, we have the INSS, FGTS, ERF deducted by the employer, and in the PJ, we have the contractor, the employee, the minor company handling their own tax. So he is going the one that paying all the simples, DAS, DAFT, if it's applicable, everything will be the one handling. The benefits, the third salary, the FGTS, maternity leave, sick leave, and all those leaves will be handled by the employer in case of the CLT. While in the independent contract, they don't have this legal benefit unless negotiated in the contract. This is also very important because, for example, some companies they don't have this, but they negotiate. They give it to this PJ in separately. So it's also a fun part. Work hours subject to work. The CLT is subject to work hours overtime rules. And the independent contract, they are free to define their own hours. So they can choose when and how many hours they will work. It's also very, very important to understand that part. The termination rights is also different. The CLT, they receive a notice, the severance, unemployment insurance, and the independent contract, they won't receive any rights or severance pay. They can leave whenever they want also. The CLT, there is a strong labor protection. And in the independent contract, there is less legal protection in disputes. And why? Only with those changes we can already know why there is so many difference and why we need to be aware, right, Natalie? And with that, in that case, is this difference is important to understand and take the decision and how you are going to hire this employee. They should theoretically, it's an advance. Theoretically, it's an advance to hire a PJ. However, if for some reason this employee is working a job that has a more CLT character, this employee can easily report the company. Like if for example, negotiate this a contractor, but the employees is following basically a CLT structure, just that they are paying less, then the employee can and will sue the company for that. Also, some stuff from the salary need to be very well calculated, because even though a PJ can receive less than the minimum wage, if this employee proves that her work is more like a CLT than this company, they also need to pay back wages, third salary, FGTS, vacation, based on the minimum wage or actual work performed. In the end, if the companies need autonomy and flexibility from our work, a true PJ is fine. Like, for example, let's say that you have a contract and you only be working like for 2-3 months, then it's better to have a PJ than a CLT. But if you want to have an employee for longer than that, then I think you should go to a CLT. So if make sure to understand what type of employee you want to have in that company before designing the contract. If the company requires control, loyalty, and long-term engagement, CLT always. If they want fixed, if they want something more flexible, without this supervision all the time, and needed to provide anything to this employee, then a PJ is fine. So I think from everything, this is actually one of the most important.
Amazing, Anna. You're so knowledgeable. It's unbelievable. So let's move on to a few audience questions. Now, I'm going to start with one that literally follows what we've just been talking about. So for contractors, is a 13th month salary mandatory still?
Well, if the person is hired under the CLT of contract, even if informally referred to as a contractor, then yes, the third salary is mandatory. If the individual is a PJ, which we were talking, then meaning an independent contract, we will sue invoices and so on, then they are not entitled to have this third salary. However, in practice, some PJs negotiate additional compensation. It's not called third salary, but they receive under the table as part of their service contract. But this is purely a contractor and not a legal requirement.
Super, thank you. And this one takes us back to what you were talking about at the very beginning of today's session. So can you manage e-social manually?
Yes, we can manage manually through the e-social web platform. However, this is only feasible for very small business and simple payrolls. And also if someone on those teams is also familiar with the social technical requirements. It's as I told, it's worth nothing that it's social, is highly detailed and update frequent, making any manual handling time consuming and error prone. So even small business, they are encouraged to work with account firm or payroll provider to ensure compliance and avoid penalties.
Sure, everything's about avoiding penalties.
Yes.
So in Brazil, are food vouchers and transport benefits required?
Okay, the transport benefit, which is called Vale Transporte, they are mandatory for CLT employees who use public transportation commute. Every employees they may deduct up to 6% of the employee basic salary established under the law. For food voucher, like Vale Alimentação and Vale Refeição, which also has a different, okay, in those two, in one being more like the meal that the employee will eat every month, and the other being more like market grocery shopping. They are not mandatory under the federal law. However, if there is a collective bargain agreement or employment contract include, then it becomes mandatory. If it's in the contract or in the collective agreement, then you need to pay. And companies participate in the PAT, Programa de Alimentação do Trabalhador, may offer food benefit in exchange for tax incentives through participation is an option. And as for 2024, there is new regulations that in the past that require more transparent and documentation to continue receiving tax benefits. And employers should ensure their voucher met the update criteria. Also, the contractors, they are not entitled to those benefits unless explicitly included. And interns and domestic workers, they are eligible for Vale transportation under specific conditions. Food vouchers are not mandatory unless specified in agreements.
Okay, thank you, Anna. The next question is, can we pay severance in installments?
In Brazil, severance pay must generally be paid in a single lump sum, not in installments, unless there is a formal agreement or exception circumstance. If the employee work the full notice period, the severance must be paid on the next business days after the termination. If the notice was not worked, the payment must be made with 10 days from the termination date. Payment in install is not allowed by default, and failure to pay on time can reduce in fines of 1 month's salaries. Installment pays are only legal safe if there is a mutual agreement between the employee and the employer. If the agreement is formally documented, ideally through an agreement filed in the court, or mediation or arbitration conducted by a labor union or legal mediator. The court or labor authority approves the arrangement, especially in case of judicial settlements or layoff involving a large number of employees. But it's important, even if the companies and employee agree on installment payment, this does not exempt the company from being fined if the legally required deadline was missed. And for large layoffs, companies may negotiate installment payment with the Ministry of Labor or Labor, especially when there is a financial difficult. But this should be documented and ideally ratified to the labor court. Best practice is always then to pay severance in a lump sum to reduce exposure unless there is a formal court approval alternative. And there is even a joke here that if there is a law that always bites you, is the labor law. So you can be as rich as possible, you can be as powerful as possible, but you'll be receiving a punishment if you do not comply by the law.
Sure. Wow. Thank you, Anna. We probably have time for one more. So we'll go back to the 13th salary because I think this is going to be one of those things that people just have unlimited amounts of questions on. So when it comes to the 13th salary, do part-time employees still receive that?
Yes, our employees hired under the CLT, they are entitled to the third salary, regardless of whether they work full-time or part-time. This right is guaranteed under the law, and the third salary is calculated proportionate based on the number of months worked in the calendar year. However, freelancers, independent contract, and PJ workers are not entitled unless this benefit is explicitly included in their service contract.
Super. Thank you so much, Anna. I think probably the two biggest things I'm going to take away from this session is number one, if it's not in the e-social, it's not in your payroll. And number two is you spoke so much about communication with employees, and just being honest if there is an error in your payroll, talking to your employees about it, making sure they understand that that issue has arisen and it's being resolved, and not letting them just be sort of out of the loop. They want to know what's going on with their pay. And people in Brazil, they understand their pay as well. So just be open, be honest. Like, I think this is so important to like really shout about having that personal element within the payroll, especially in a world where so much is being automated. Our systems can now do more things for us. We're bringing in more and more AI into our payroll. Processes are being automated. What's so important is that we still have the people there to talk to employees, to help them to understand, especially when it comes to a time where there's an error in the payroll and where somebody's pay has gone wrong, because for that person, it could cause massive issues. So it's so important to have somebody where you can call them up and say, help, something's gone wrong with my pay, could you explain? So Anna, you're so right in shouting about that importance of communication with your employees and being really open and honest with them. So thank you so much for highlighting that. I think it's so important. And it honestly, it shows how brilliant you are as a payroll professional as well, to see that as like the number one important thing within a payroll. So thank you so much. I think what you've brought us to understand today is that Brazil is a super tricky payroll. It really does require that local insight, local knowledge, and working with an expert who understands the local legislation and, like you said, the local languages as well is super important to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So with the right approach, I think Brazilian payroll is completely manageable, and especially if you've got experts like yourself on hand, who you can ask questions to, get advice from, then running a Brazilian payroll should be seamless. I think for our audience, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. I think we're on the second last stop of Global Pay Fest now, and hopefully you've left feeling much more confident and have a much better understanding of Brazil's ecosystem. Anna, I hope you don't mind me saying, anyone who has watched this session and feels like they still have questions or aren't so confident in their Brazilian payroll operations, you're absolutely fantastic to reach out to. And you hold so much knowledge. I think people could learn so much just by dropping you a message or connecting with you on LinkedIn and just asking those questions and getting that advice from an actual real expert. So do rewatch this session, share it with your friends, your colleagues, anyone who's looking to expand into Brazil, or even those already managing the Brazilian payroll as well. No one in the world knows everything, so there's always something you can brush up on. Anna's done a great job of breaking it down for us. We're near the time, but Anna, is there anything you would like to say to our viewers before we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Natalie, for that opportunity. Thank you for this space for me to talk about Brazilian payroll. As we mentioned, they can be complex due to the unique mix of federal labor unions, labor laws, specified agreements, and frequent regulate updates for any corporate of that are planning or want to or is operating in Brazil, is essential to consult with a local payroll expert or legal advice to avoid costly compliance issue. But it's manageable. It can be done. It's not impossible. So before you enter in the market, companies should first ask it and themselves what kind of operation are we building here, and what type of employment relations will I need to get in this market. Brazil is a promise and dynamic market in Latin America, but also one of the most regulated when it comes to labor. Our CLT is designed with a strong protection for workers, reflecting Brazil's long-standing labor tradition. This employee-centric legal framework can be challenging for foreign for employers who are unfamiliar with this. For companies already operating in Brazil, the priority should be staying current with the local laws and ensuring that they have an automatic software, and most important, ensuring they have a good connection with people. Having professionals on the ground who speak sport and deeply understand the payroll, it will be a different. The local specific goes beyond compliance. It enables better risk management, smooth employee relation, and a strong employer brand in the market, which is the most important. So it may be challenging and difficult, but also you get the brief of it. It will be very smoothly.
Amazing, Anna, thank you. Obrigada. You've been absolutely amazing. We are now moving on to the penultimate stop in Global Pay Fest 25. That is in, oh no, sorry, I'm so sorry. This is the penultimate stop. We're moving on to the final stop, which will be in Argentina. We're staying with Neeyamo, and we are speaking with Delfina Brull, who is the Argentinian payroll specialist. Do stay tuned. You know that you've learned so much from Anna already. Delfina is absolutely brilliant. So keep with us, grab a coffee, and we'll be in Argentina in a few minutes with our next session.